10s. In today's lesson, we're going to be looking at simultaneous equations, and we are doing grade 10 substitution method, right? So now, without any further ado, let's just get right down to the lesson. But pause before we get into the lesson. Please like and subscribe to the channel so that you get more content on this channel. So now let's look at the topic. Now we are given the steps to solving simultaneous equations by substitution. Step number 1 says we need to look for the simplest equation. Now remember, with simultaneous equations, we'll be given two equations whereby we'll have two unknown variables, right? So with this one, you will notice that one of the equation will be a bit tricky, will look complicated, but then the other one will look simple. So you want to choose the one that looks simple and start solving, right? Then step number 2 is that you will make the variable with the lowest coefficient the subject of the formula. So from that simplest equation that you have chosen, you need to make the subject of the formula from the variable with the lowest coefficient. Remember, what is a coefficient? That's the number that comes before the variable, right? Then step number 3, we need to label the equation as equation number 3. That equation that you have made the subject of the formula, now you label it equation number 3. Then step number 4, you substitute that equation number 3 to the equation you haven't used. Step number 5, you solve to get the value of one variable. So that could be your x or that could be your y, depending on what variable you have made the subject of the formula. Then step number 6, you substitute the value you got to equation number 3 so that you can get the value of the other variable, right? So now, having seen all the steps and read all the steps, let's now look at the questions and see if we can apply these steps correctly. Say you have 3x plus 2y is equals to 13, and you have 3x is equals to 2 minus y. So now the first thing that you want to do is you want to write these equations as equation number 1 and equation number 2, right? So what do we have here? So we have 3x plus 2y is equals to 13, and then here we have 3x, so that's 3x is equals to 2 minus y. So we'll label this equation 1 and label that equation 2, right? So now let's check which variable or which equation rather has looks simple, right? Which one is the simplest equation? So we can see, if we look at equation number 1, we can see if we wanted to make at least one variable the subject of the formula here, it would force us to have fractions, right? Now we know if we have fractions, that's a recipe for disaster, right? Then let's look at equation number 2. Looking at equation number 2, we can see that we at least have one variable that has the lowest coefficient. The coefficient here is -1. This one is quite simple to make the subject of the formula because you do not have to divide anything so that it makes a fraction there. So now that means our simplest equation in this case is equation number 2. So we come here and take equation number 2 as our simplest equation. Now let's write out equation number 2. So we have 3x is equals to 2 minus y. Now remember, step number 2 says you need to make the variable with the lowest coefficient the subject of the formula. We can see that the easy one to make the subject of the formula is y, but then here our y is negative. We want to make our subject of the formula a positive variable, right? So now we can take this negative y and transpose it to the left hand side. That means we have positive y is equals to, remember on the right hand side we are left with this 2, and then now we have to take this 3x, transpose it to the right hand side here, so that we have 2 minus 3x. Now remember, step number 3 says we need to label this equation as equation number 3, right? So this equation that we've made the subject of the formula with, we need to now label it equation number 3. Now step number 4, we need to take equation number 3 and substitute it to the equation that we haven't used. What is the equation that we haven't used there? It's equation number 1, right? So remember, we cannot substitute back into equation number 2 because we simply took equation number 3 from equation number 2. So it's safe to say that equation 2 and equation number 3 are the same, right? Just that here we have equation 3 being in the form of y being the subject of the formula. Then now we need to say indicate here. Let's indicate. We'll say now we need to substitute. Remember, this method is substitution. So we say substitute equation number 3 into equation number 1. It is important that you state what you are doing there. Then that means where I see y, I will need to substitute that expression. So I have 3x plus 2, and then in bracket I have 2 minus 3x, right? Then that's equals to 30, right? Now we can see from this point that's solving for x, right? So we have 3x. Now what do we need to do with this 2 multiplied by this 2 inside here? We have plus 4, and this 2 multiplied by that negative 3x there, we have negative 6x, then is equals to 30, right? Now at this point, what do we do? Let's continue. So at this point, we can try to make everything that is a variable of x remain on the left hand side while your constants are on the right hand side. So we have 13, then we need to transpose that positive 4. When it goes to the other side, it becomes negative 4. Then we have 3x minus 6x, that gives us negative 3x. Then 13 minus 4, that gives us 9. So what are we supposed to do now? Divide both sides by negative 3. Divide both sides by negative 3. Now we have x is equals to negative 3, right? Now at this point, remember we have used equation number 3 to solve for that one variable, right? So step number 6, which is the final step, says now we need to take that variable, we need to take that value that we got for this variable and substitute back into equation number 3, right? Remember, equation number 3 is in the form of the subject of the formula. So we take that y and substitute to equation number 3. So now let's write equation number 3. It's y is equals to 2 minus 3x, right? So now what are we supposed to do? It's y is equals to 2, and then in the place of x, now what do I put? I put negative 3, because remember I've now calculated that y value. Then 2, negative 3 times negative 3, we know that gives us a positive 9. So what is 2 plus 9? We have y is equals to 11. So in that way, you have solved for x and y simultaneously. Awesome. Say you have 5x plus 4y is equals to 21, and 2x is equals to 3 minus y. So the first thing we want to do, remember, we want to write this as equation number 1 and equation number 2. So we have 5x plus 4y is equals to 21, and then let's label it equation number 1. And then we have 2x is equals to 3 minus y, and then let's label it equation number 2, right? Now having all this, let's now look at the equation that is simple, right? Now we can see again that if we choose equation number 1, if we wanted to make at least one of the variables here a subject of the formula, it will force us to have fractions, right? We do not want fractions. those are a recipe for disaster. So we want to check for equation number 2. If we check equation number 2, we can see again we have a negative y here, which has the lowest coefficient, right? So this one is quite simple to make the subject of the formula. So we're going to choose equation number 2 as the simplest equation. Now let's proceed. So writing out that equation number 3, we have 2x is equals to 3 minus y. So now we want to make y the subject of the formula, but then it is negative. So we take this one, transpose it to the other side. We have positive y, and then here we are left with 3. So what is 3? We take this one, transpose it to the right hand side. We have negative 2x. But then remember, we need to label this as equation number 3, right? So we label that equation number 3. Then what is the following step? It says take that equation number 3, substitute it to the equation you haven't used. So what is the equation that we haven't used? It's equation number 1. So what are we going to write here? So we write substitute equation 3 into equation 1, right? So now we write that 5x plus 4, but then remember, where I see y, I need to now substitute this expression, right? Because I'm saying y is equal to 3 minus 2x. So where there is y, I now substitute that expression. Why are we doing this? Because we want to deal with one variable at a time, right? So we are doing that substitution because now we want to deal with x, find the x, and then we can deal with y. Then this is 5x. 4 times 3 here, that gives us 12. And then we have 4 times negative 2x, that gives us negative 8x. And then that's equal to 21. Now at this stage, what do you want to do? At this stage, we want to have all the variables or all the terms with x on the left hand side and all the constants on the right hand side. So we have 5x minus 8x, and then on the right hand side we have 21. If we transpose that 12, it becomes negative 12, so that's 21 minus 12. Then what is 5x minus 8x? That gives us negative 3x, right? Then what is 21 minus 12? So if we say 21 minus 12, we get 9, right? Then dividing both sides by negative 3, our x once again is negative 3. But then what are we supposed to do? Now that we have used that equation 3 to solve for x, we have the value of one variable. We need to take that value of that variable and substitute it back to equation number 3 because it's in the form of the subject of the formula, right? So now what do we have? We have y is equals to 3 minus 2x. That's your equation number 3. But now since we have the value for x, we say 2, and then in the place of x we substitute that negative 3, right? So we have 3, negative 2 times negative 3, that gives us positive 6. So now we have 3 plus 6, that gives us 9. So you have solved for x and y simultaneously. Now let's look at another question. Let's say this time around you have 2x plus y is equals to 4 and 3x minus y is equals to 11, right? So again, we look for the first thing that we want to do is write out our equations as equation 1 and equation 2. So we have 2x plus y is equals to 4. This becomes our equation 1. And then we have 3x minus y is equals to 11. That becomes our equation 2, right? Now remember, we need to choose the one that is the simplest. Which one is the simplest equation? So now looking at equation number 1, we can see that it will be pretty easy to make y the subject of the formula here. Why? Because it has the lowest coefficient, and then we will just need to take this 2x and transpose it to the other side. Now equation 2 looks a bit simple too, but then if you wanted to make y here the subject of the formula, you can see y here is negative, so it will be a little bit of a hassle. So let's just go with equation number 1. But then with this one, either way, if you made equation number 2 the simplest equation, that would still be correct. But then for the sake of the question, let's just choose equation number 1, right? So in this case, let's just rewrite equation number 1. So we have 2x plus y is equals to 4. So we want to make y the subject of the formula. So let's isolate that y and then take this 2x, transpose it to that other side. But remember, we are left with 4 on the right hand side, so that's 4 minus 2x. Then remember, we label this equation number 3, right? So now that we have that, what are we supposed to do now? That equation number 3, we take it and substitute it to the equation we haven't used. We haven't used equation number 2 here. So we need to say substitute equation number 3 into equation number 2 this time, right? So this is 3x. Now where I see y, I will have to substitute my expression. But be careful, we have a negative there, so you need to say negative, open brackets, then you substitute in your expression. Then it's equals to 11. So what do we have here? We have 3x, then a negative times a positive here. We have negative 4. Then this negative times a negative here, that produces a positive. Then we have positive 2x is equals to 11. Now at this point, remember, we want to have all the terms with x on the left hand side and all the terms that are constants on the right hand side. So now we have this will be 3x plus 2x is equals to 11. Then that negative 4 becomes plus 4, right? Then what is 3x plus 2x? That is 5x. And then what is 11 plus 4? That gives us 15. So at this point, we need to divide both sides by 5. Both sides by 5. Then we have our x. Our x will be x is equals to 3. Now at this point, since now we have the value for x, we need to go back to equation number 3. We need to now take equation number 3 again and then substitute that value for x. So what is our equation number 3? We write y is equals to 4 minus 2x, right? But remember, we do have the value for x, so we have 4 minus 2, and then in bracket we put that 3, right? Then this is 4 and then negative 2 times 3, that gives us negative 6. Then our y is 4 minus 6, that's negative 2. That's negative 2. So yes, we have solved for y using our simultaneous equations. So yep, let's look at another question. Let's say this time around you are given 2x minus 4y is equals to 6 and 3x minus 5y is equals to 10. Now with this one, you can see there is no variable that has a coefficient of 1 or -1 here, right? So which one looks simple? Now looking at, let's first write equation number 1. So this is our equation number 1, 2x minus 4y is equal to 6. Label it equation number 1. Then we have 3x minus 5y is equals to 10. Label that equation number 2. Then if we can check here, let's look at equation number 2. If we wanted to make equation number 2, or we wanted to choose equation number 2 as the simplest equation, then you can see that here we would be forced to have fractions if we wanted to make at least one of the variables the subject of the formula. So remember, if you wanted to make x the subject of the formula, you would need to take this -5y, transpose it to the other side, but then you would need to divide by 3. Now 3 is not a common factor between 5 and 10, so definitely it will produce a decimal, right? Now let's look at equation number 2. With equation number 1, if we look at equation number 1, we can see that we have 2x minus 4y 6, whereby we can see that all these numbers have a common factor of 2. And then the lowest variable here is also 2. So that means if we divide all these numbers by 2, since we can see that's an equation, then we would be able to make x the subject of the formula with ease, right? So that means equation number 1 would have to count as the simplest equation. Now let's rewrite equation number 1. We have 2x minus 4y is equals to 6, right? So we want to make the one with the lowest coefficient the subject of the formula. So in this case, that's x, right? X has the lowest coefficient of 2. Then having that, we now have, so let's isolate this 2x, and that side we have 6 plus 4y, right? So, but then making this the subject of the formula, we have to divide by this 2. What you do on the left hand side, you also have to do on the right hand side. Now, here we are left with x because 2 divided by 2 is 1. So we are only left with that 1x. Then what is 6 divided by 2? And that gives us 3. That gives us 3. Then what is 4 divided by 2? 4y divided by 2. That will give us 2y. So now let's label this equation number 3. Remember, now x is the subject of the formula. So we have produced our equation number 3. Now the following step is to take that equation number 3 and substitute it to the equation we haven't used. So what is the equation that we haven't used? It's equation number 2. So now where I see x, I'll have to substitute that expression. So we have 3 here. So now let's write substitute equation 3 into equation number 2. Equation number 2, so we have 3, and then in the position of x, I substitute that expression. This is 3 plus 2y. Then minus 5y is equals to 10. Now what are we supposed to do here? We solve. What is 3 times 3? Gives us 9. What is 3 times 2y? 6y. Then minus 5y is equals to 10. Now we want to have all the terms with y on the left hand side, and then all the constants on the right hand side. So we have 10, transpose that positive 9, we have negative 9. So what is 6y minus 5y? 6y minus 5y, that gives us y. And then what is 10 minus 9? That gives us 1, right? So now, having that, we need to now substitute in equation number 3 so that we have the value for x. So we write our equation number 3. This is x is equals to 3 plus 2y. But remember, what is our y? It's 1. So 3, 2 times 1. Then our y becomes, what is 3 plus 2? That's 5. Then that's it. That's how you have your solutions, x and y simultaneously. So let's look at this one. With this one, you can now see that we are dealing with those variables with a degree of 2 here. So you can see that's x squared minus 9y squared is equals to 33. And we have x minus 3y is equals to 3. So now let's write this. Let's write this. So we are given x squared minus 9y squared is equals to 33. And let's make that our equation 1. And then we have x minus 3y is equals to 3. Then we make that our equation 2. Now, which one looks simple? We can all agree that equation number 3 looks simple. So you don't want to complicate yourself with this one because you can already see that it is squared, right? So just go for the one that is linear here. So that's equation number 2. So our equation number 2 in this case would have to count as the simplest equation. Now rewrite equation number 2. This is x minus 3y is equals to 3. Now again, we want to make the variable with the lowest coefficient the subject of the formula. So between x and y, which one has the lowest coefficient? We can all agree that it is x, right? Because it has a coefficient of 1. So let's make x the subject of the formula. So we have x is equals to 3 plus 3y, right? Remember, we took this one and transposed it to the other side. Then label this equation number 3. Now that we have equation number 3, we need to take this equation number 3 and substitute it to the equation we haven't used. So we haven't used equation number 1, right? So remember, we cannot substitute it back to equation number 2 because that's what we used to deduce this equation, right? So substituting, let's write, and we say substitute equation 3 into equation 1, right? So there we go, we have our equation number 1. So where I see x, I substitute that expression. That's 3 plus 3y. And then remember, we have a square there, so I need to put that square. Then minus 9y square is equals to 83. Now solving this, we know that this will expand to 3 plus 3y. And then 3 plus 3y minus 9y square is equals to 83, right? Now let's solve here. We have 3 multiplied by 3, that gives us 9, and then 3 multiplied by 3y, that gives us 9y, and then we have this 3 here multiplied by 3, that gives us 9y, right? So remember, that's foiling, and then we have this 3y times that 3y squared. So we have plus 9y squared. Then remember, we also have this one, so we drop it as it is, 9y squared is equals to 33. At this point, you can see that we have like terms as 33. So at this point, you can see that we have like terms, this one and that one, and also these are like terms, right? So what do we do with like terms? We either add or subtract them, right? So with this one, let's see, we have 9 here. Let's drop this 9. Then we have 9y plus 9y. That gives us 18y. But here you can see that these are like terms but with opposite signs. This one is a positive, this one is a negative. So what happens? They cancel out. That gives you 0, right? So they cancel out. Then we are only left with 9 plus 18y is equals to 83. Now at this point, what do you want to do? You want to isolate the term with the variable y, and then take the 9 here, the constant, and transpose it to the other side. So we have 18y is equals to 33 minus 9, right? So what does it give you? We have 18y is equals to, so if you say 33 minus 9, what is the answer that you get here? So we have 33 minus 9 in your calculator. You have that's 24, right? Then what number can we divide here? Obviously we're going to divide by 18. Divide by 18, right? Now what is our y? So what number goes to 24 and 18 and leave no remainder? We know that's 6. How many times does 6 go into 24? It goes 4 times. And then how many times does it go into 18? It goes 3 times. So for this one, we're going to have a fraction like that. Then let's continue. Now, what are we supposed to do? We need to take that y and transpose it to equation number 3, right? So our equation number 3 looks like this. So we have x is equals to 3 plus 3y. So this will become 3 plus 3 in bracket 4 over 3. So what will happen here? The 3 will cancel out with this 3. Then we are left with 3 plus 4, right? Then what is 3 plus 4? That gives us 7. So we have solved for this equation simultaneously. So that's how you solve this question, guys. Please keep on practicing. All the best. Ra.